The man called her an expired antique. Loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Margaret Thompson sat frozen at her table in the Willow Room. A cozy, candlelit place off Covent Garden. Watching her blind date stride off without a backward glance. Laughter rolled through the dining room like an unwelcome wave. Her hands shook against the crisp white tablecloth. From across the room, James Carter watched it all unfold. He glanced down at his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, who was carefully twirling spaghetti round her fork. Then back at the woman who once brought him homemade chicken soup when he was too ill with flu to even stand. He scooped Lily up and walked straight over to Margaret's table. James had recognized Margaret the moment she walked in. Even after 3 years, he could never forget the woman who'd shown him more genuine kindness than her own daughter ever had. She looked different now. Older, yes. But it was more than that. There was a quiet fragility in the way she moved. A small hesitation that hadn't been there before. She wore a deep navy dress she'd clearly chosen with care. And her silver hair fell in soft waves. She was trying very hard. When the man arrived 30 minutes late, James had felt his stomach knot. He watched as the tall, grey-haired man in the expensive suit approached Margaret without a word of apology. Instead he looked her up and down, like she was a piece of furniture that had been wrongly advertised. Then came the words that made James's blood boil. "The photos online made you look much younger. I don't date museum pieces." He said it loud enough for the nearby tables to hear every syllable. Then he turned and left her sitting there, alone in the center of the room. The laughter started as whispers, then grew bolder. A woman at the next table didn't even try to hide her smirk. Margaret sat perfectly still, back straight, chin lifted. But James could see her hands trembling. He saw the exact moment her composure began to crack. He remembered another time, years earlier, when he had been the one falling apart. Struck down with a horrible flu. Alone in his tiny flat. Because Emma had gone clubbing with friends, instead of staying to help. Margaret had appeared at his door with a pot of chicken soup and a carrier bag of Lemsip and tissues. She stayed for hours, making sure he ate, making sure he was warm, making sure he wasn't alone. She did it for him. A man her daughter was only half-heartedly seeing. Simply because it was the right thing to do. And now she sat here being laughed at. And no one was doing anything. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" James looked down. Lily had tomato sauce on her cheek, eyes wide with the pure concern only children have. "She's feeling a bit poorly, love," he said softly. "Can we make her happy again?" Something shifted deep inside James. He thought of all the times he'd stayed silent, when he should have spoken. All the times he'd walked away, when he should have stayed. He thought of his Nan, who raised him after his parents died, who taught him that a real man protects those who can't protect themselves. "Yeah," he said, lifting Lily into his arms. "We can try." He crossed the restaurant with his daughter on his hip. Every step felt like a mile. Eyes turned. The black man with the little girl heading straight for the upset white woman. He knew what some people were thinking. He didn't care. Margaret looked up as he reached her. Her eyes widened in recognition. Confusion replaced the humiliation on her face. "I'm so sorry I'm late, darling," James said, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. He slid into the chair opposite her, as though he belonged there. Traffic was an absolute nightmare. Margaret opened her mouth. No words came. She looked from James to Lily, trying to understand. Lily reached across the table and patted Margaret's hand. "Hello, Nanny. I missed you." The word hit Margaret like warm sunlight after rain. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. But these were different. Grateful. Bewildered. Kind. She looked at James. A silent question. He gave the smallest nod. "Trust me." Then James did something that surprised even himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his Nan's ring. The simple gold band he always carried, as a reminder of the woman who raised him. He had never planned to use it like this. But in that moment, it felt right. He dropped to one knee beside her chair. The restaurant went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every fork was set down. Every eye turned. "I found the ring," James said. Voice steady and clear. "I know we said we'd wait. But I can't wait any longer. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Margaret stared. Lips parted in shock. For a terrible second James thought she would expose the charade. Tell everyone she had no idea who he was. But then her face softened. The shame faded. A spark of the old Margaret returned. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes." Applause exploded through the room. People who had been sniggering moments earlier were now cheering. A waiter rushed over with a bottle of Prosecco. On the house, someone started filming. Near the exit, the man Robert stood red-faced, then slipped out the door, unable to watch the celebration he'd accidentally caused. Lily clapped with pure delight. "Daddy and Nanny are getting married." James slid the ring onto Margaret's finger. She looked down at it. Expression unreadable. When she looked up, her eyes were shining. "Why?" she mouthed silently. He leaned close, pretending to kiss her cheek. "Because you deserved far better than that." The rest of the evening passed in a warm blur. Congratulations, camera flashes. Strangers stopping by to wish them well. The manager brought a complimentary sticky toffee pudding with a candle on top. Lily charmed everyone, telling them her new nanny was the best nanny in the whole world. When the crowd finally thinned, James and Margaret sat quietly opposite each other. Lily slept against James's shoulder, face sticky with pudding, breathing soft and even. "You didn't have to do that," Margaret said quietly, voice thick from holding back tears all night. "I know. That was your Nan's ring, wasn't it?" She looked at the delicate band. "I remember Emma mentioning it once. She said you never let anyone touch it." James felt the familiar pang at Emma's name. "My Nan gave it to me before she passed. Told me to give it to someone who truly deserved it. And you think I deserve it? Tonight? You absolutely did." Margaret gave a small, genuine laugh. The first real happiness he'd heard from her all evening. "You'll have to take it back once this blows over." "I know." They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, London lights twinkled. Strange. Sitting here with his ex's mother, pretending to be engaged. Strange. But not unpleasant. "How have you really been, James?" she asked. He almost lied. The way he did with most people. But her steady gaze made honesty feel necessary. "It's been hard," he admitted. "The cafe's struggling. Rent's behind. Some days I don't know how we'll get through the next month." He looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully. "But I keep going for her. Margaret nodded slowly. Emma never told me much about what happened. One day you were together. The next she was gone. She left when Lily was 6 months old. Said she wasn't ready to be a mum. James kept his voice even. Haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry, Margaret said, carrying guilt that wasn't hers. I tried to reach out after she left. But I didn't want to overstep. You were my daughter's ex. You never overstepped, James said. You were the only good thing about that whole relationship. The words hung between them. Margaret's eyes glistened. She looked away, gathering herself. I've been alone 15 years, she said softly. Ever since my husband left. Emma blames me. Says I was too demanding, too needy. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am too much. You're not too much, James said firmly. You're exactly enough. Anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you. Margaret looked at him. Really looked. As if seeing him for the first time. Thank you, she said. For tonight. For everything. Lily stirred, murmuring about chocolate. James smiled. We should head off. Someone's past bedtime. Margaret nodded. Neither moved. A quiet connection hung in the air. Something that had perhaps always been there. Waiting. Can I give you my number? She asked. In case anyone asks questions about this. She gestured at the ring. Sensible. They exchanged phones. Fingers brushed. Neither mentioned it. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. James walked her to her car. Lily still asleep in his arms. They stood in the car park. Not quite ready to say goodbye. Good night, James. Good night, Margaret. She drove away. He watched her lights disappear round the corner. As he buckled Lily in. She opened her eyes a crack. Daddy? Yes, love. I like Nanny. Can we see her again? James smiled. Brushed a curl from her forehead. We'll see, sweetheart. We'll see. 2 days later James woke to his phone buzzing like a beehive. 347 messages. 26 missed calls. His Instagram, usually lucky to get 5 likes a week, had exploded. Someone had filmed the entire proposal at the Willow Room. The video was everywhere. Caption things like, Single dad proposes to his ex's mum. Love has no age. Kindness wins. Most wholesome thing on the internet today. Over 2 million views and climbing. His heart pounded. This was supposed to be a one-time act of kindness. Now it was viral. The phone rang again. Margaret's name. Have you seen it? Her voice was breathless, edged with panic. I'm looking at it now. My phone won't stop. Friends are calling to congratulate me. My neighbor brought round a shepherd's pie this morning. James, a reporter from BBC London, wants to interview us. James rubbed his face. Through the wall he could hear Lily waking, humming her nursery rhyme. We need to talk, he said. Can you come to the cafe this afternoon after the lunch rush? Yes. I'll be there. He ended the call and stared at the ceiling. What had he started? The cafe was quiet when Margaret arrived. James had closed early. Private event sign on the door. He didn't want customers overhearing what would be a complicated conversation. Margaret looked different. No elegant dress, just slacks and a soft cardigan. Face bare of makeup. She looked tired. But more herself. Lily was playing in the corner with her soft toys. arranging them for a pretend tea party. When she saw Margaret, her whole face lit up. "Mummy's here." The word struck both adults like lightning. James opened his mouth to correct her, but Lily was already running over, wrapping her arms round Margaret's legs. "I missed you, Mummy. Are you staying for tea? Mr. Bunny wants to meet you." Margaret knelt to Lily's level. James watched the panic in her eyes melt into tenderness. "I would love to meet Mr. Bunny," she said softly. She looked up at James. "A question." He walked over, gently took Lily's hand. "Sweetheart, can you play in the back room for a bit? The grown-ups need to talk about the wedding." James felt his face warm. Something like that. Once Lily was settled with her juice and toys, James and Margaret sat at one of the small tables. The ring still sparkled on her finger. "She called me Mummy," Margaret whispered. "I know. I'm sorry. I should have explained better." Margaret shook her head. "No. It's just. No one has called me that in years." Emma stopped when she was 13. Said it was babyish. They sat in silence, the weight of the situation settling. "We have a problem," James said. "That video isn't going away. If we suddenly say it was fake, you'll be humiliated all over again. Worse this time." "I've thought the same," Margaret said, fingers twisting in her lap. "What if we don't announce anything? What if we let it fade? Wait a few weeks. Then quietly say it didn't work out?" "That could work," James agreed. "But we'd have to keep up the act until then. People will be watching." Margaret nodded slowly. "A few weeks. We keep up appearances. Let the attention die down. Then go our separate ways." "A few weeks," James echoed. But even as he said it, something in his chest told him it wouldn't be that simple. The weeks that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Margaret started coming to the cafe every morning, ostensibly to help with the breakfast rush. In truth, she began teaching James her family recipes. Proper scones, Victoria sponge, lemon drizzle cake. The kind that filled the place with warm, buttery smells. And brought customers back. On the third week they tried proper afternoon tea scones. It was a disaster. The dough was too wet. Then too dry. The oven was too hot. Butter leaked everywhere. By the fourth failed batch, they were both head to toe in flour. The kitchen looked like a snowstorm had hit. And Margaret had somehow got clotted cream in her hair. James looked at her and started to laugh. A real, deep laugh he hadn't felt in years. Margaret stared at him for a second. Then she was laughing too, leaning on the counter, tears streaming down her floured cheeks. Lily ran in at that exact moment. She stopped in the doorway, eyes wide. "Daddy, Mummy, you look like snowmen." That only made them laugh harder. James felt something crack open inside him. A wall he hadn't known he'd built. When he finally caught his breath and really looked at Margaret, he didn't see his ex's mother. He saw a kind woman who made him feel less alone. That same evening everything began to unravel. James was wiping tables when the bell chimed. He looked up and froze. Emma stood in the doorway. She looked almost exactly as he remembered. Tall, blonde, polished. But there was a hardness in her face now. A sharpness around her eyes. "So it's true," she said. Voice calm but dangerous underneath. "You're really doing this?" Before he could answer, Margaret came out from the back with Lily on her hip. Lily was chattering, but went quiet when she saw the stranger. Emma's gaze locked on her daughter. The daughter she'd walked away from. For a moment her composure cracked. Something raw flickered across her face. "Mummy, who's that lady?" Lily asked, pointing at Emma. The word mummy hit Emma like a slap. She took a step back, face paling. Margaret set Lily down gently. "Sweetheart, why don't you show Daddy your drawings? The ones you made today." Lily looked between the adults, sensed the tension, but went with James to the back. He stayed close enough to hear. "What are you doing here?" Margaret asked quietly. "What am I doing here?" Emma shot back. "What are you doing, mother?" "Parading round London with my ex. Playing house with my daughter." "Your daughter?" Margaret's voice was quiet but steel. "You lost the right to call her that when you walked away." Emma flinched. "I was 27. I wasn't ready. And now? Are you ready now?" Margaret waited. Emma said nothing. "That's what I thought." Emma's hands clenched. "This isn't about Lily. This is about you and him. Do you have any idea how this looks? How people are talking?" "I don't care how it looks." "Of course you don't. You never did. That's why Dad left." The words hung like poison. James saw Margaret go white. Saw her hands tremble. "Your father left because he found someone younger," Margaret said slowly. "And you've spent 15 years blaming me. Because it's easier than admitting. Sometimes people just leave. Sometimes they leave. And there's nothing you could have done differently." Emma's eyes filled with sudden tears. "I left James because I knew he'd leave me eventually." "Everyone leaves. You taught me that." "I never left you, Emma. I'm still here. I've always been here." "No." Emma shook her head, backing toward the door. "You're not my mother anymore. You're just a lonely old woman who couldn't find anyone her own age. So she took my leftovers." She was gone before Margaret could reply. Door slamming behind her. James found Margaret in the kitchen, sitting on a stool, face in her hands. He didn't speak. He just sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, and waited. "She's in so much pain," Margaret whispered finally. "And she doesn't even know it. You can't fix her." "I know. But I keep hoping she'll let me try." They sat in the quiet kitchen until Lily came looking for dinner. And life, as it does, went on. But Emma wasn't finished. 2 weeks later James arrived at the cafe to find his creditor waiting outside. A portly man with a permanent frown. "Heard about your engagement to a wealthy woman," the man said. Smile unpleasant. "Funny how you couldn't pay before. But now you're planning a wedding. Makes a man wonder about priorities." James tried to explain it wasn't what it seemed. The damage was done. Rumors spread like wildfire through the high street. Regulars stopped coming. They looked at him differently. The genuine single dad now suspected of being a gold digger. Then came the night someone threw a brick through the front window. James heard the crash from the back room, where he was tucking Lily in. By the time he reached the front, glass was everywhere. A note tied to the brick with rubber bands. "Sugar baby, go home." He stood in the ruined shop, surrounded by shattered glass, and felt something inside him break. All his work, all his hopes, destroyed because he'd tried to help someone He didn't hear Margaret come in. He only realized she was there when she knelt beside him, picking up pieces of glass with bare hands. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice hollow. "You'll cut yourself. Then we'll both have cuts." She kept picking up shards. One by one. James knelt beside her. They worked in silence, hands moving carefully through the debris. When their fingers brushed, neither pulled away. "I'm sorry," Margaret said. "This is my fault. All of it." "It's not," Emma told the creditors. "She's trying to save me from you. She doesn't understand." James sat back on his heels, looked at her in the dim light, glass glittering around them like fallen stars. She looked beautiful. Not young. Not old. Just beautiful. "Margaret," he said slowly, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I stopped pretending about a week ago." She stared, not understanding. Then her eyes widened. "James. I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons this is mad. But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm home. I haven't felt that since my nan died." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth, but her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Expression changed. "It's my brother. He's threatening to cut off my trust fund. If I don't end this publicly." "Your trust fund?" "My parents left me money. My brother manages it. He says I'm embarrassing the family." James felt the walls closing in. His shop destroyed. Reputation ruined. Now Margaret threatened by her own family. "Maybe we should just tell the truth," he said wearily. "And lose all of this." "No." Margaret's voice was suddenly firm. "I won't let them win. I won't let them take this from me." But 3 days later, she did exactly that. James was sweeping up when his phone pinged with a news alert. He opened it. Live stream from BBC London. Margaret on screen. "I'm here today to set the record straight," she was saying. Voice steady. Hands clasped tightly. "James Carter is not a con man. He is not a gold digger. He is a good man who saw a woman being humiliated and chose to help her." She took a breath. The proposal at the Willow Room was staged. There is no engagement. No relationship. It was a moment of kindness that I allowed to spiral because I was lonely and wanted to feel special again. The fault is mine. James Carter is innocent of every accusation. I ask that you leave him and his daughter in peace." The interview ended. James called her. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He drove to her house. Heart pounding. Lights off. No answer at the door. He walked round the side. Peered through the window. Margaret sat alone in the dark. In a chair by the window. Staring at nothing. She looked smaller. As if telling the truth had taken something vital from her. James pressed his hand to the cold glass. Wishing he could reach through. She had sacrificed her dignity to save him. Now she was more alone than ever. James didn't sleep that night. He sat in his small flat, watching Lily breathe through the crack in her door. Turning his nan's ring over and over in his fingers. He had knocked on Margaret's door for nearly an hour. No answer. Called a dozen times. Voicemail. Finally, exhausted, he went home. Next morning he found an envelope taped to his door. Inside, his nan's ring. And a note in Margaret's handwriting. "Thank you for everything. Please don't contact me. It's better this way. But it wasn't better. Nothing about this was better. He thought of his Nan. Fierce and tender. Who believed courage wasn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. A real man, she'd told him once. Doesn't let someone else carry his shame. By sunrise James knew what he had to do. He dropped Lily at his neighbor's, with a promise to be back soon. Then drove to the cemetery he hadn't visited in months. Early morning mist rose from the grass. His Nan's grave, simple headstone, with the words she chose herself. She loved without conditions. James knelt, phone in hand. He opened Instagram and started a live stream. Within minutes hundreds were watching. Then thousands. The viral proposal had made him famous in ways he never wanted. Now he would use it for something that mattered. My name is James Carter, he began. Voice steady despite shaking hands. Most of you know me as the man who proposed to an older woman in a restaurant a few weeks ago. Some of you think I'm a con artist. Some think I'm a gold digger. Today I'm telling you the truth. He took a breath. Looked at the headstone. I'm standing at my Nan's grave. She taught me a real man doesn't let someone else take the fall for his mistakes. And that's exactly what I did. I let Margaret Thompson destroy her own reputation to protect mine. And I've been hiding ever since. Viewer count climbed rapidly. Comments flooded in. James didn't look. The proposal was fake. I saw a woman humiliated by a cruel man. And I stepped in to save her. That woman was Margaret Thompson. She didn't ask me to do it. I chose it. Everything that happened after was because of me. Tears pricked his eyes. He let them fall. Margaret went on television and called herself a lonely old woman chasing attention. That was a lie. She said those things to protect me and my daughter from the rumors destroying my business. She sacrificed her dignity so I could keep mine. His voice cracked. He let it. But here's what I didn't expect. Somewhere along the way the lie became real. Not the engagement, but the feelings. Margaret Thompson is the kindest person I've ever known. She made soup for me when I was sick. She helped when no one else would. She taught me how to bake scones even though we failed 4 times. She made my daughter laugh the way she hadn't since she was a baby. He looked straight into the camera. I don't know what you call that. Maybe love. Maybe something else. All I know is when I'm with her I feel like I'm home. And I'm not letting her sit alone in the dark, thinking she's not worth fighting for. He ended the stream. Sat in silence. Hand on the cool stone. I hope I made you proud, he whispered. 20 minutes later footsteps on the gravel. He turned. Margaret stood there. Eyes red from crying. Still in the clothes from the interview. She looked exhausted. Fragile. Utterly beautiful. I saw the video, she said. Voice barely audible. James stood slowly. I meant every word. You shouldn't have done that. Your reputation. I don't care about my reputation. I care about you. The distance between them felt huge. And tiny at the same time. Margaret took one step. Then another. Then she was in his arms. Face pressed to his chest. Body shaking with sobs. I've been so alone, she whispered. For so long. I forgot what it felt like to matter. James held her tighter. You matter to me. You matter to Lily. You're not alone anymore. They stood like that a long time. 2 broken people holding each other together. In front of a grave that meant everything James believed about love. When they finally pulled apart, Margaret looked up with wonder. "What happens now?" "Now?" James said. "We stop pretending." The cafe reopened a week later. The window was fixed. The brick gone. The private event sign disappeared for good. Customers trickled back. First from curiosity. Then from the smell of Margaret's baking drifting out the door. The live stream had changed everything. The same internet that nearly destroyed James now rallied behind him. Donations came from strangers moved by his words. Local businesses offered help. The creditor, embarrassed by the attention, quietly agreed a new payment plan. Even Margaret's brother, seeing the outpouring of support, withdrew his threats. Not from approval, but from reluctance to draw more attention to the family name. But not everyone was ready for peace. Emma arrived on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the live stream. James was behind the counter when she walked in. His body tensed. But something was different. The hardness was gone, replaced by vulnerability he'd never seen in her. Margaret came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and stopped when she saw her daughter. "Emma," she said softly. Emma didn't move. She stood looking at her mother, at James, at the cafe that had somehow become a home. "I watched the video," Emma said finally, voice rough as if she'd been crying. "The one at the cemetery." No one spoke. They waited. "I've spent my whole life being afraid," Emma continued. "Afraid everyone would leave me the way Dad left. So I left first. I left James before he could leave me. I left Lily before she could grow up and hate me. The way I hated." She couldn't finish. Margaret stepped forward. "The way you hated me." Emma's face crumpled. "I never hated you, Mum. I hated myself. I hated that I couldn't be what you needed. I hated that I turned out like Dad." Margaret crossed the room and took her daughter's hands. "You are nothing like your father. He ran from love. You're standing right here." Emma looked at their joined hands. Tears spilled. "I tried to destroy this. You and James. I told the creditors. I spread the rumors. I wanted to prove he was using you. Because if he wasn't," Margaret said gently, "then you were wrong to leave him." Emma nodded, unable to speak. At that moment Lily ran out from the back, crayons in hand. She stopped when she saw Emma, tilted her head with childlike curiosity. Emma knelt slowly, bringing herself to Lily's level. For a long moment she just looked at her daughter. The daughter she'd abandoned. The daughter who now called another woman mummy. "You've grown so much," Emma whispered. "You're so beautiful. You look like..." She glanced up at Margaret. "You look like your grandmother." Lily studied Emma's face seriously. "Why are you crying?" "Because I'm sorry," Emma said. "I'm sorry I went away." Lily considered this, then held out a crayon. "Do you want to color with me?" Emma made a sound. Half laugh, half sob. "Maybe another time." "Okay." Emma stood, looked at Margaret, then James. "I'm not ready to stay. Not yet. But I want to try. If you'll let me." Margaret pulled her into a hug. "The door is always open." Emma left without looking back. But differently this time. Not running away. Walking toward something she didn't yet understand. 1 year later the cafe looked transformed. Walls painted warm butter yellow. Margaret's recipes on a chalkboard menu. A framed photo near the till. James, Margaret and Lily covered in flour, laughing at the camera. The shop closed early for a private event. A small crowd of friends and regulars gathered. Faces bright with anticipation. James stood in the center. Lily at his side. In his hand not his Nan's ring, now safely in a velvet box. But a new one. Simple, elegant. With a small stone that caught the light. He'd designed it with Lily's help. Margaret stood before him. Eyes glistening. The first time I proposed, James said. It was a lie to save you from embarrassment. This time it's the truth. He took her hand. I love you. I love the way you burn the edges of the scones. And pretend it was on purpose. I love the different voices you use when you read Lily her bedtime stories. I love the way you've made this broken man feel whole again. He dropped to one knee. Margaret Thompson. Will you marry me? For real this time? Margaret laughed through her tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Lily jumped up and down. Mummy said yes. Mummy said yes. Applause filled the room. James slid the ring onto her finger. And stood to kiss her. Through the window he caught a glimpse of a figure on the pavement. Emma. She hadn't come inside. But she was there. Watching through the glass. When she saw James looking. She didn't run. She lifted her hand in a small wave. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Not jealousy. Release. Emma turned and walked away. But something in her posture said she would be back. Not today. Not tomorrow. But someday. And when she was ready. The door would be open. James turned back to Margaret and Lily. To the small crowd that had become family. For the first time in his life. He was exactly where he belonged. Kindness isn't pretending to be strong. It's choosing to stand up for someone when the world turns cruel. One small act of courage can plant a seed. And sometimes, if you let it, that seed grows into something real. A home. A family. A love you never expected. Sometimes doing the unthinkable is simply doing what's right.